Hello and welcome once again to It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. I'm your host, Frank Weber, welcoming you back here to the forest. I'm so glad to see you and glad that you took a little time to be with me today. I've got a great show for you here. The week before Christmas already, can you believe it? Time is sure flying by. I'm going to start today with kind of a semi-serious topic. I think it's a fairly important topic, and then I'll move into some more fun stuff, also important topics, I would say. I don't want to minimize anything here, but some fun stuff regarding Christmas and, favorite movie, what I'm looking for Christmas, that sort of thing. So it'll be a lot of fun. What I wanted to start off today talking about is a nuanced topic that no one seems to be talking about. And this has actually been going on for quite a few years, and it's always kind of bothered me. I guess I have this little gut feeling inside me that says, like, well, you can do this, and it's not going to be necessarily bad, but should people really do this type of thing? And so I'm going to give you a lot of food for thought here. And it doesn't really matter historically who the president is or who the president will be, but I've always been perplexed at how cabinet members are picked and whether they should be picked a certain way, if that makes sense to you. Now, President Trump is incoming. He's picking nominating a lot of his potential cabinet members. I have some concerns about some of them. Some of them seem to be kind of out of left field, but this is not really a political discussion here. I'm not going to go into a deep dive about specific candidates or anything like that. It's just more about the process is what I'm going to get into here today. Now, also keep in mind here, I do believe we need cabinet picks who have some real-world experience with the industry or department that they're going to be or I should say, they have real-world experience that they can take to head up the department that they are presumably going to preside over. I think that's very important. But whether they can actually do the job or whether there's some stories circulating about them out there, some of which the media probably make up, that's not really up to me, and it's not really what I'm going to be talking about here. What I am going to be talking about here, though, is how a lot of the picks, I don't think there's a lot from the Senate, but there are a lot of picks of people from the House, and maybe some governors as well. And what I don't get about that, they're obviously, like every politician, they're trying to further their careers. Now, if you have a governor who runs for the presidency, like we did in Texas with George W. Bush a few years ago, and then they get elected to be the president, obviously he has to resign the governorship, and then the lieutenant governor becomes the governor and everything. That's a little bit of a different story. But the cabinet is an unelected position. They're nominated and then confirmed by the Senate. But when they're nominated and they're in the middle of a term, or in the case of House members who just had an election on November 5th, every 2 years, have to run every 2 years, of course, is it really right to take them in the middle of a term from their constituents, their district's constituents, and put them into these cabinet positions? Because it seems like it almost seems like kind of a backdoor betrayal of the people's will when that happens, because they obviously have to have some contingency plan. Now, let me give you a couple of examples here. So when I was living in Arizona back in 2008, that was the year President Obama was first elected to office. The governor at that time in Arizona was Janet Napolitano, and he appointed her to a cabinet position. Was she director of Homeland Security, maybe? I can't really remember. But anyway, she was in the middle of a term And of course, she was a Democrat, like he was, or still is. And so she had to resign that post in the middle of the term. And the lieutenant governor, because most states' governors and lieutenant governors don't run together, the lieutenant governor was Jan Brewer, who was a Republican. So now Jan Brewer is elevated to the office of governor of Arizona as I'm not only a different person, but a different party. How does that fit in with the will of the people? Because they did not elect her. They did not elect Jan Brewer to the position of governorship at that time. I think she won it a couple of years later, but that's just one of those weird quirks about the cabinet picking. And then one that is very recent, of course, is this year with Matt Gaetz, who was Trump's original pick for Attorney General, I believe, right? And so he had just won re-election in his district in Florida. And then within a few days, Trump nominates him for this position. And then he immediately resigns his House seat before he even begins this next 2-year term, which you would think they would be obligated to. And then a couple of weeks go by, and there's some concerns about some ethics investigation of him and some other crazy dealings going on. And so he eventually withdraws from the nomination process, but he's already resigned from his House job, and now that district in Florida, I guess, is going to have a special election. I mean, he's basically unemployed. He, resigning the day he was nominated was a pretty bad idea. Speaking of Matt Gaetz, he sure has a crazy head of hair, doesn't he? It all slicked back and full head of hair and whatnot. He has a lot more hair than I do on the head anyway. I mean, I still have some up here, but, I have it other places too. Anyway, so that's just something that it's always bothered me. Like, the people elected you, the people in your district or your state, they elected you to be their representative in this particular elected office for however long it is, 2 years, 4 years, whatever the term is. And now you're kind of turning, in a backdoor way, of course, you're turning your back on them in order to go to this unelected, nominated cabinet position, where, of course, you have to be approved by the Senate. So, I don't know, how well does that really fit together with our constitutional republic, or what some of the liberals would call democracy? That's really crazy to think about, but it's something that bothers me, and I don't know if a lot of people really think about it too much. I'm just trying to give you some food for thought, and a lot of cabinet positions usually they quit or move on sometime during the president's term, or whether it's a first term or a second term or whatever, they quit and move on. They talk about their representatives or governors or whatever and doing a good job where they're located at, and now they're going to go do something else in Washington. I don't know. It's all about priorities with me, and is this a betrayal of the people in some way? Again, I mean, people are free to do what they want to do, but usually, they don't leave elected positions unless there's something untoward or unethical happens, or they die in office, or a lot more like in the House and Senate, since these politicians consider this a lifetime job. But anyway, that's something worth thinking about. I think it's kind of deep, but it's important to give it consideration in our country these days, and it's always been on my mind for a lot of years. So anyway, I'd really like to hear what you think about that. Oh, and one last thing I would add to this is, I don't think you should take the politicians from legislative jobs. They're too important to pass your legislative agenda, which is the way it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be mostly executive order. You need those elected politicians in there to help legally get your agenda through the House and the Senate so that you can sign the bill and sign it into law one day. When you have a governor appoint somebody in their district or state to take their place. There's a lot of fluidity, by the way, amongst Republicans as well as Democrats as to which centrist are you going to be further one way or the other. So they maybe get replaced with somebody who's not as ideal in terms of furthering that agenda, in this case, Trump's agenda. Anyway, that's it for the civics lesson today. For the rest of the show, I wanted to share a couple of things about myself at Christmas time and things you might have been wondering about, things that I can comment on for a while that I think are pretty fun. My favorite Christmas movie of all time, and it's a true Christmas movie, by the way. I don't think that, I'm kind of getting on a little bit of a tangent and soapbox here, but I have to say real quick, Die Hard's not really a Christmas movie, at least in terms of its spirit. I don't know who came up with that idea. The movie came out, by the way, I don't know if you were around back then, Die Hard, and I think it came out in like 87 or 88. It came out in July. All right, and it's obviously set at Christmas, but it's not really a Christmas type of story or Christmas type of spirit, obviously. It's a very violent movie, so it is not a Christmas movie. That's bullshit. But I thought I would share that with you real quick. You can also, potentially, some other movies would fall into that general range too. Chevy Chase, of course, who is famous as Clark Griswold, and of course they had the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which it's one of my favorites. It's not my most favorite, but I think the movie is terrific. Not too long before that, Chevy Chase was in a movie called Funny Farm, which took place over probably the better part of a year and wound up ending at Christmas. But it too is not a Christmas movie. So I just wanted to get that out there off my chest. I think people take a lot of liberties and leeways as how they classify things nowadays. But anyway, I have to tell you that my favorite Christmas movie, because I am kind of a goofy, slapsticky sort of guy, is a Christmas Story from 1983 with Peter Billingsley was the kid, Ralphie, who wanted a Red Ryder BB gun rifle. There's a lot of reasons why that movie is so important to me. I don't remember when I saw it for the first time, but the thing that made it really big is that in the late 90s, they would start on Christmas Eve, and for 24 hours, I think it was originally on TNT, they would play the 24 hours of A Christmas Story. And then I think it went to TBS for a while, the sister channel, 24 hours of A Christmas Story, and now it's like on both of them, but I think they're both staggered, where a new showing is done every hour, I believe. There's a lot of things to kind of digest from the movie, and I think that are pretty important. My brother and I, we had a BB gun that we used on the farm, Dad's farm as a kid, farm we still have at the moment. We know what it's like to have a BB gun. It was a rifle. The first one was a rifle, and then I think later we had a pistol. I can't remember if there was one after that or not. Another BB gun, maybe. Mostly we shot our Uncle EJ's beer cans, his Pearl Light cans, that he somehow managed to get drunk on American Near Beer, which is something that I mentioned in an earlier show. But mostly we were shooting at cans, just target practice. We tried not to shoot at the animals there. I know there was a funny story about my brother shooting out the window of Lee J's truck that was sitting under a tree for 6, 7, 8 years, something ridiculous. Apparently Lee J was a hell of a mechanic, but he could never get his truck fixed, and it just sat there, and Tom shot it out until my dad eventually hauled it off or something. But so I had to share that part with you because we were little boys and we had a BB gun and we had a good time with it. And I think there was another time actually where Tom shot me in the forehead with that, and I bled quite a bit. It was a pretty ugly scene, but the shoot your eye out thing, I think, is that's a very real possibility, and obviously that's repeated ad nauseum in the movie Christmas Story. That leads me into telling you what's the real meaning of that story, and to me, it's about, a kid who is on a quest for a particular Christmas present, but being a kid, not really having a lot of money to his name or really any kind of power to actually get what he wants for Christmas outside the normal means of asking Santa or his parents for the gun. It's just a very whimsical, dreamy movie, and the don't shoot your eye out thing is the real challenge of it, because that's the conflict, the turmoil he has to go through. Mom tells him not to shoot his eye out, and the teacher and Santa Claus, maybe a couple of others, I don't remember, but it kind of looks bleak. And then they get to, obviously, if you've seen the movie, they get to Christmas morning, and it appears like he didn't get one, and then turns out his dad did get one, and then he went out in the backyard and played with it, almost shot his eye out. Great movie, great funny movie, lighthearted, sort of slapstick. That's my favorite Christmas movie, though. In terms of a kid, like I said, not having those means and ways of getting a BB gun, it's like he kind of overcame something without really having to overcome it, if you will, because the odds certainly looked against him that he was actually going to get that gun. And they also had a really crazy obsession in that movie with the Wizard of Oz that we could never figure out. And it was obviously set in, I think, the early 50s, supposed to be in Chicago. The house is in Cleveland, actually, in real life. Now, some of the other people in the movie, Darren McGavin, the father, passed away a little while ago. I think he was in a lot of things, a lot of movies and stuff. I think he was in The Natural not too long after this, the baseball movie. I think he played, was it Gus? It was one of the bad guys. I could never figure out exactly what his relationship was to the team ownership. And then Melinda Dillon, I know, was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And then she was also in that Paul Newman hockey movie where I think she had an extended topless scene, if I recall correctly. I think that movie was it like Slapshot or Slap Out? I almost called it Slapstick. But anyway, the mom and dad, they had some previous acting experience, and I don't know as much about the other kids in the movie. But anyway, that's my favorite movie, Christmas Stories. I think, it's on that 24 hours. 24 Hours of a Christmas Story is what they call it. I think it's been on for every Christmas for at least 25 years now. I think it's a little bit more than that, maybe close to 30. So you should check it out this year if you have cable or satellite. Or maybe, I guess a lot of the streaming services have it now too. I'm going to go ahead and end this show just, I guess, kind of giving you a Christmas wish of what I'd like for Christmas. I actually have a very long list of things. Most of them, though, I think are immaterial, or I should say non-material. Immaterial kind of sounds not important, right? But they're really kind of non-material. As far as this podcast goes, I was thinking about, I'd really, for Christmas and the New Year, I would really like to have greater clarity as to where I take this show. You know, I talk a lot of times over and over again and haven't really done too much about it yet, about having guests or maybe going to having a video format as well as the traditional audio here. there's some reasons why I haven't done those other things yet. And I kind of like to have, I'm thinking at least 5 to 10,000 followers. I mean, the numbers keep going up and up and up, and I'm very thankful for those of you who are tuning in every week. I really appreciate that. I'd like to have more of an organic growth than always having to go out there and advertise, I guess, or market myself. I haven't really been the best marketer or anything like that, but yeah, if I could get those things for Christmas or in the new year, I would be really appreciative, and really, like always, very thankful for you. Obviously, I'll ask you one more time, hit that subscribe button or follow button, and tell your friends and family and everybody you know, everybody you run across, whether it's at the grocery store or at school or at work, church, you name it, just let them know about It's a Frankly Harry podcast and Life's Comedic Odyssey. I've also been thinking a little bit, I may have some other things that may be going on in the new year, 2025. I am, of course, like I said last week, I'm going to be doing the Tuesday and Thursday articles at least through the end of the year, which would be actually December 31st. When we get to January 2nd, I don't really know what I'll still be doing article-wise. Been thinking about maybe dropping that again and focusing exclusively on this podcast, in light of all the other things that I'm looking at doing in the new year. So that's just another heads up for you here. But anyway, we'll have, of course, a new show, a new podcast episode on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, and like always, every Wednesday after that. So I look forward to it. Can't wait to see you again. And well, I'm going to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you again next week. I love you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.